Hey guys, Jared Cohen here from cpbgrowth.com with another episode of Preventative Practice. CrossFit Games open season is right around the corner, and I'm starting to prep some of my athletes with some old Games workouts, particularly 14.3. And in honor of that, I wanted to give you a whole take on my version of how I would warm up and prep for this. I'm a big believer in treating the warm up like that multivitamin that you're taking to fill in those gaps. So this is not going to be a lot of rolling. It's not even going to be too much like banded, supple upward stuff. It's going to be heavily informed by those types of practices and also heavily informed by some functional range conditioning, trying to put it all together and give you something that will really get your body fired up and ready for this massive monster workout. It's only 8 minutes, but it's something that can eat you alive. And when the shorter they are, the more likely you are to not be ready for it. We tend to just kind of rush the warm-up and go right in. So let me show you what I've got laid out for you. The spine and the hips are the big players in this workout. Okay? We're not going to worry too much about shoulder stuff because the workout is deadlifts and box jumps. All right, 8 minutes, you have an ascending ladder of deadlifts, both in reps as well as volume, which is definitely an easy recipe for disaster with the spine. So I want to talk about prepping the spine, not just in a neutral orientation, but also prepping it in a dynamic way so that you're better able to be neutral and actually buffer the times when you get out of neutral. And then box jumps, really thinking about what's going on with that dynamic hip extension. So we're going to utilize a functional range conditioning concept by Andrea Ospina called CARS, which stands for Controlled Articular Rotations, using active rotational movement drills at the outer limits of motion to stimulate articular adaptations, outer range control, and kinesthetic awareness. So let's start with the spine. Okay, I have here, you're going to do one set of 6 CARS in a standing position, both directions, and then we're also going to look at this in a quadruped position for what I'm just referring to as a segmented cat-cow. Okay, so we'll come over here so you can see me more clearly. I'll just give you a couple demos here. So when I'm thinking about controlled articular rotations of the spine, I'm going to incorporate my head and neck. All right, so I start in flexion. I'm going to purposely get everything to fold. Okay, that's my true global spinal flexion, and then I'm going to take that to the left, and everything opens up. Cervical extension, thoracic, lumbar extension, and then I start folding back from the lumbar, everything leans to the right, and I complete that circle. Okay, so this would be one direction. And then I want to make sure I'm going to get the other direction as well. So I'll start over. Really making sure that I have the capacity and fluency with which to have some movement take place. We want to be disciplined about neutral, but every so often a mishap is going to happen, and the body needs to have been prepared to know what that feels like to actually go into that range. Quadruped position. Disclaimer here, I'm not the best at segmenting this. This is something I'm working on. I've found that so much time being so disciplined and overly rigid about neutral spine that I've really lost the ability to actually create movement in the torso. And that's where this warm-up is treating me like a multivitamin. So quadruped position, I'm going to start 6 of these. One direction is going to start with the upper spine and then work its way down, and then the other 6 will start with the lower body and then work its way back up. So here I go. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Cervical flexion, and then really trying to tune in and then I'm going to open up from the upper portion. Bring those facet joints closer together. And then again, I close from the top. Trying to go down the line. Now if I already did the 6 from top to bottom, then I'll go 6 from bottom to top, starting with lumbar extension. Point that sacrum and cossack up and back, and then pull back under. Okay, take your time with this. Again, we're really trying to prep the system and prep the mindset for the fiery storm that's going to take place with this workout. All right, coming back to the board. Hips, okay? Again, notice here, 1 by 6, both directions. I start abbreviating this as we go down the line here. BD stands for both directions. For the spine, you only got one spine, so it's just 1 by 6, both directions. When we start talking about the hips, the knees, and ankles, you got 1 per each side. So not only is that 1 by 6 in both directions, but that's 1 by 6 both directions and the other one as well. Okay, so we'll look at that here. Starting with hip controlled articular rotations. We'll come out in front again. With this, feel free to hold on to something for balance. Get organized, right? Playing off of our supple leopard concepts, I'm going to put myself into a good position. Feet are straight, squeeze the butt, belly's tight. And now I'm trying to show that I have articular independence and I'm not moving elsewhere. So I'm going to choose to move right now at the left hip. Flexion, external rotation, nice and tall. I squeeze that butt, trying not to let the knee drop. I get that internal rotation. You should feel a big cramp in that butt there, and I come all the way around. So this is one direction. I would do 6 of those. Slow for the win. 6 in the other direction. Hip goes into extension, internal rotation. Belly is tight. Get that knee as high as you can. Externally rotate, pull that guy in. Okay? So that would be 6 front, 6 back, and then I got to do the same thing on the other hip. Quadruped position. Okay, when you're going with the quadruped position from the front, it's a little hard to get that external rotation, but I'm going to still try nonetheless. I pick up, try and stay squared. I open up as much as I can, thinking knees out, and then actively turn that knee down and come around. Again, try not to lean, stay squared, engage the midline. I have to stay stiff and solidified in the areas that I'm not moving to only move in the one joint area that I want to move. When I go backwards, it's a little bit more straightforward. I kick back, really squeeze that butt muscle. Glute medius is firing, and then I pull that knee back in. All right? Same thing, 1 by 6, quadruped position, both directions, both sides. Now we're going to go into some controlled articular rotations with the knees and ankles. We got plenty of ankle stuff coming with the box jump, and we don't often think about the mobility that our knees need, just like with the spine, right? We often think spine and knees, just be mobile in the hips and the shoulders, and those spine and knees will kind of take care of themselves, but we still want to get those joints moving. We want to buffer some of the issues. So coming back over here, I'll show you knees and ankles. So when I'm going with the knees, I'm going to take my feet together, closed chain here, a little bit of hip flexion, okay? And then I allow those knees to jut out as much as they can. Big circle here. It's okay if the ankle comes, or the foot comes off the ground a little bit. And then I extend those knees. Right, so your knees actually do have some rotation, and I want to prep that. Nice and slow. Okay, so here I'm going with both knees together. Assuming I just did 6, I'll now go the other direction. Lastly, ankles. With the ankle, I'd prefer that you work on this unilateral balance. I'm going to start with plantar flexion. I'm going to flex hard. Okay? And then I come off to the side here. This is technically inversion. Then I dorsiflex hard. And then I'll come off to the other side here. This is eversion of the ankle. Really trying to just isolate at that ankle. Okay, you might get some nice pops. Okay, so 6 in both directions, and then I'd get the other foot as well. Okay, moving forward. Cars is how we start everything. The joints should feel nice and supple and loose. You should have better kinesthetic awareness already. Okay, hips, dynamically warming up the hips a little bit more. We have a banded flexion and extension flow. Let me show you that here. So flow is key here because I want to encourage you to not statically hang out, but really get things moving. Okay, and be comfortable moving from shape to shape. So 2 positions here. Flexion. Okay, we've all seen this before, Kelly Starrett. But I want you to think a little bit less about that squat position and more about this deadlift position, getting into those hamstrings. Okay, so I'm in this shape number 1 for about 3 seconds. And then now that banded leg comes behind, shape number 2, about 3 seconds here, hip extension. And you're just gonna flow back and forth. Squeeze that butt, anchor back, hip extension for 3 minutes here. It's a large chunk of time, but it takes time to work in and actually have space to work with, okay? Then you'd get the other side for 3 minutes as well. Next, we go banded 90-90 flow for 2 minutes. This is another Andre Ospina functional range conditioning position we're going to play with here. So 90-90, 90 degrees with the knee up front, 90 degrees with the knee in the back. You can see I have the band focusing on my trail leg, this hip in internal rotation. And this is how this flow will work. I'm going to lean over, circle around that front leg, getting some stretch into that front butt, and then try and stay tall. Keep this front leg down, and bam, drive that knee out. And then control the internal rotation back down. I circle again. 2 minutes here, breathing, working on your breathing, taking time to actively control every little corner. Okay, so 2 minutes, and then I'd switch for the other side. Lastly here, gonna bias the hamstrings. Turning those hamstrings on in a shortened position. I can't stress how important this is, and you'll notice it as well when you start tuning into some of the cramping sensation that your body isn't used to. So another functional range conditioning piece here, passive range holds. With the passive range hold, you're going to set up as if you were doing a hip extension stretch, right? Stretching the hip flexors. I'm going to grab my back foot, heel to butt. Okay? Now, before I do anything, I have to get organized. So I squeeze the butt, inhale in the stomach, exhale, make it tight. Everything's locked in. Now, I'm going to let go of my foot, and I want to try and resist the foot falling as much as possible. Okay, so from here, I let go, and I want to contract hard, hard, hard. I'm trying to pull that heel back into my butt, control this shortened range contraction of the hamstrings. See if you can get about 10-second hold here, and then you'll relax that. Okay? So that's the hamstrings passive range hold. Okay, you can see there 1 by 5, both sides, about 10-second holds, and then you'll get the other side. Okay? So there, we've really done a very comprehensive job, not just from a, not just from a joint and muscular standpoint, but from a very active control standpoint, making sure that you actually have the range of motion to own and make use of, and if something goes wrong, there's a little bit of give and some play in the system. Okay? We finish up here with just something a little bit more dynamic, and then I'll show you how I'd walk my clients or athletes specifically into just a quick little warm-up to get the nervous system hot and ready to go for those 8 minutes of, let's be honest, hell. Okay? So we're finishing up here, monster walks. By now, if you don't have a mini band that you're playing with, you're behind the times. So mini band, around the ankles here, working on controlling that torsion of the hip. You're gonna get 10 yards one direction, 10 yards the other direction. 3 sets. Notice here that I have a essentially kind of jump squat stance that I'm starting with. I open up wide and then I want to return to that same starting position. What I don't want to have happen is I come in too close and I'm unable to maintain that tension as I walk. Okay? Moving forward. Banded broad jumps. This is a huge player in making sure that your box jumps actually look like good box jumps. Okay? 3 by 10 forward and back. What does that look like? I still have the band on to just better cue physiologically what's going on with the hips. Deadlift position, kettlebell swing position. Notice how every time I stick that landing, I'm not falling forward and I'm always catching in the same position I started. Okay? So you'd get, what do we got there? 10 going forward and then 10 going backwards. So the reverse challenges you in a different position in space and really being able to stabilize that landing. Okay, no bloody shins on that box. 10 forward, 10 back, 3 sets. Lastly, banded good morning. So I got both bands here, just one big set of 30. I'm going to try and challenge this a little bit wider just to play into more of the adductors here. And here we go to bring everything together. At this point, you should feel like the most supple, active ninja this world has ever seen. Okay, and then you're coming out of that. And lastly, I take you to 4 minutes, 5 deadlifts, 135 pounds. So for guys, you're starting at just the lightest weight for what the workout would be. For females, you would just do this at 95, and then 5 box jumps. 4 minutes, this doesn't need to be crazy. I would just have a nice, easy pace to start getting that body ready to go. A lot of people think, oh, I don't want to burn out. Trust me, right? The most common thing we hear with athletes and CrossFitters especially is like, it took about 3 rounds in before I started feeling good. It took about 3 rounds in because you weren't appropriately warmed up. Okay, so not only are you hot and sweaty, but movement-wise, the angles of position are ready to go. And I want you to get this with as much working in your favor as possible. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave a question in the comments. Prepping the system in a very integrated, comprehensive manner, particularly as we see what would be useful for 14.3 CrossFit Games Open from 2014. Who knows? We may see this coming up in a couple weeks as a little repeat workout. I'm Jared Cohen, CPB Growth, another episode of Preventative Practice. Thank you.